Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, wherever you're joining us, whether that be Michigan, Wisconsin, California, wherever it is, we just want to say thank you for joining us. And we're so privileged to have you constantly moving with us in this journey. And so we are moving through the book of Genesis, and for some of you joining now, we're on chapter 29 for the second time, and you're saying, "Man, this looks like a 2-year study." It is. This is a deep, deep study over the book of Genesis. We like to delve in deep because, again, this book was not written in English. This book was not written by Americans. This book was not written by Christians. This book was written by Jewish people, Hebrew people. In fact, these stories, these rituals that are all deeply, deeply inside of these pieces, they are begging for us to study them in order to really understand the text. And so what we do every week is we delve deep, deep, deep. We look at these pieces and we say, what was the author's intent? Right? What can be gleaned from this after learning the actual context, not putting any of our ideas in first, but seeing what the text has to say to us. And then, only then, do we then challenge ourselves of what to do with it next in our own lives and our own culture. So welcome to Ethos. This is what we do. We read this beautiful, beautiful, holy, beautiful text called the Bible. And so we're reading through Genesis. And so as a reminder, as we delve into Genesis, we want to remind you again, Genesis was not a history book. Truth be told, the Bible is not a history book. Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, this compilation was never written to be a literal history book. It was written as a response to Babylonian captivity in the very beginning. And so 587 BC, might surprise you, the Israelites were not the first tribe to ever walk the earth. There were older tribes, right? Israel steps onto the scene as a pretty young nation. And so Babylon, this great empire, they step onto the scene and they begin conquering all these tiny tribes. And so Israel is one of them. 587 BC, their temple's destroyed. They are marched hundreds of miles on foot into the city there in Babylon, and they are with all these other tribes. And so the question, of course, that we touch on every single week is, are they going to assimilate or not? Will they take on Babylonian gods or not? Will they hold on to their rich traditions, monotheism versus polytheism, or will they begin to adopt Babylonian ways? That's the question, of course. And so Genesis is really the response to it. We're going to hold on to our roots, right? And they compile all the stories, all the rituals, all the warnings they remembered from kings. They put all of it together. And so as they bring Torah out in front of the public, there would be celebration. Because for the Jewish people, they saw themselves in the story. Every time Abraham, Moses, Jacob, Joshua, anytime these characters enter into a scene, there's a hushed silence because they know we are Israel. Every one of these people is Israel miniaturized. We are in the story. And so I want to invite you to join me as we delve into Genesis chapter 29, 12 through 35. This is a big chunk. And we typically don't do big chunks like this. Usually it's like eight to 9 verses max. This is a good chunk. And the reason we chose to do the larger chunk today is because there is a basic story told here. And if you pull it too far, if you chunk it up, you miss the story. And so the story, there's a really interesting, beautiful metaphor. There is a lesson for the Hebrews on how to interact with neighbors. There's all of it, but you only get it if you read the story in its entirety there within 12 through 35. And so I'm going to do my best to not lose my voice and read through some of these verses with you. And then we'll go back and we'll just delve into some of the words, phrases, concepts, historical commentary from rabbis from centuries ago. We'll do all of that. But let me remind you again, Jacob and Esau. when Jewish people read about Jacob and Esau, they saw these two brothers not as necessarily literal people. And what they saw is themselves in the story. And so we've talked about this. Jacob, again, is the one who dwells in tents, right? He's the one that understands Torah, the beautiful gift of Torah, the promise given to Israel. He understands it. Esau does not. He wastes the promise. He wastes the gifts. He doesn't understand it. He's willing to trade it for a bowl of soup, right? We understand these two individuals, what they really represent are the higher self and the lower self for Israel. They saw themselves in both of these characters. And so this is why, again, one rabbi will say the twins are really the beautiful light and darkness that we Jews embody from day to day. Whichever side we feed is the side that will either waste the blessing of life or multiply it. So for Israel, the question was, will you, when we receive the blessing, when we are freed, will we waste it or will we multiply it? That is the question over and over and over again, right? Jesus asked this question over and over again. What will you do with the blessings you're given? What will you do with these talents that you're given, right? What will you do with them? And for Israel, it was less about literal talents and more about what will we do with the blessings we're given, the kingdom of heaven. Will we waste it away or will we multiply it? Will we bring others in? So good, right? So I'm going to read to you here, and we'll just delve right in. Chapter 29, verses 12 through 15 on this first slide. Here we go. Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. So again, remember, Jacob shows up at the well. Jacob sees Rachel. He kind of falls for her a bit. She's been tending sheep. He makes sure that he waters her sheep. Love at first sight, right? And so she sees again, this is my father's kinsman. She's running home to go get him. Verse 13. Now it came to pass when Laban heard the report of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran towards him. He embraced him and he kissed him and he brought him into the house. He told Laban all these happenings. And Laban said to him, "Indeed, you are my bone and my flesh." And so he stayed with him a full month. And Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you work for my gratis? Tell me what your wages shall be." Right? Should you work for free? Well, no. Tell me what you want to be paid, right? Something deeper going on. We'll get to it. 16 through 19. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was, Rachel. Leah's eyes were tender, but Rachel had beautiful features and a beautiful complexion. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will work for you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter." And Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Stay with me." So Jacob worked for Rachel 7 years, but they appeared to him like a few days because of his love for her. Oh, right, that's beautiful. Jacob said to Laban after the 7 years, right? "Give me my wife, for my days are completed that I may come to her." So Laban gathered all the people of the place. He makes a feast, right? It's a big wedding celebration. And it came to pass in the evening that Laban took his daughter Leah, and he brought her to him, Jacob, and he came to her. And Laban gave Zilpah, his maidservant, to his daughter Leah as a maidservant. And it came to pass in the morning, and behold, she was Leah. And he said to Laban, "What is this that you have done to me? Did I not work for Rachel? Why have you deceived me?" Deception, right? Jacob's used to this. Someone stole the blessing. Yeah. And Laban said, it is done so in our place to give the younger one before the firstborn. It is not done. And so verse 27, "Complete the wedding week of this one, and we will give you this one too, for the work that you will render for me another 7 years." And Jacob did so, and he completed the week of this one, and he gave his daughter Rachel to him as a wife. And Laban gave his daughter Rachel, his maidservant Bilhah, for a maidservant. And he came also to Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah. And he worked with him yet another 7 years. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Whoa, right? And the Lord saw Leah, and Leah was hated. So he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and bore a son, and she named him Reuben. For she said, because the Lord has seen my affliction, for now my husband will love me. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, since the Lord has heard that I am hated, he gave me this one too. So she named him Simeon. And she conceived again and bore a son, and she said, now this time my husband will be attached to me, for I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore he named him Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son, and she said, this time I will thank the Lord. Therefore she named him Judah. And then she stopped bearing. That's a mouthful today, right? It's a mouthful. Here we go. Let's delve right in. When we look at this, verse 13, notice something. There is a deep, deep tradition here that if you were Jewish, you would understand this. Laban is a character to be despised in Jewish culture. Laban is the greedy one. He's the one that takes advantage of family. Understand this. If you are a Jewish person, a Hebrew person, and you're in the Middle East, and you are taken advantage of by a stranger, maybe to be expected. Maybe. If you are taken advantage of by a family member, this is like curse of all curses. And so this is how most commentators, and I would argue the writers who wrote this, they picture Laban as this cruel family member that takes, that finds ways to essentially take advantage of the younger generations. Laban. And so rich tradition here. So I'm going to share with you an interpretation that's very, very popular. It's one of the most popular when it comes to this verse, chapter in chapter 19 of verse 13. So notice this. He ran towards him. Laban ran towards Jacob. He embraced Jacob. He kissed Jacob. He brought him into his house. Jacob. So I want you to notice something here. This is straight from the commentary, and I find it really interesting. And again, I add some notes here, so if you ever want to look this up, go for it. But he ran towards him. This phrase is an interesting one because most of the commentators believed he runs towards him because he thought Jacob was going to be bringing money, resources. Oftentimes, this is what happened with the younger generations. They would show up to family members' homes, and they would bring with them riches and gifts so that they might be able to stay in that home. However, here's the thing about Jacob. What does Jacob have? Nothing. The shirt off his back, right? But the idea here is Laban runs to him because he thinks, I'm going to get some money. I'm going to get some resources. I'm going to get some gold, right? He runs to him. He's salivating, right? He's not running to him because he's family. The Jewish tradition here is that he runs to him expecting to take advantage of the gift. And then I love this. Not just runs toward him, notice this, and he embraces him. And I love the commentary here. When Laban did not see anything with him, he said, perhaps he has brought golden coins. They are in his bosom. They're in his pockets, right? So you get this, I just think it's a hilarious commentary. You get this picture of Laban running and not seen. Oh, maybe it's in his pocket. So he reaches, he embraces him, and he kind of pats him down, right? Is there gold in here, right? He's looking to take advantage of Jacob. He's literally like, right? That's the commentary. Again, a very ancient commentary of Laban, the kind of person they viewed Laban as. And then notice this, then he kisses him. I thought this was a funny one. Perhaps he has brought pearls and they are in his mouth, right? I just think this is so funny. Yeah, it goes even further. He's really searching to try to figure out what can Jacob give me, right? And if you are a Jewish person and you understand the deep significance of inviting the stranger in, the widow in, the orphan, right? You would understand when family is there, it's not about what you get, it's about what you give. And so Laban is deeply, deeply against the grain here. He is moving against the common value that the Hebrew people had for family, right? And the last one, he told Laban, and he came only because he was compelled to do, right? So Laban says, well, stay at my house, right? He feels compelled, but notice only a month, right? There's only a month, and that one's, again, really fascinating. So Jacob is given the least, and again, so notice this. What does he do? Stay for a month. But then he says, I will have you work for me, right? And what does he do for Laban? Well, he does what Rachel was doing, right? Jacob is given the least prestigious position one could hold in Laban's home, a lowly shepherd just above a servant or slave. So Jacob is like brought low again here in this moment, right? He is basically mistreated. They're trying to take advantage of him. And in the face of injustice, like what is Jacob going to do? Well, he goes out and he tends sheep. He takes on this very lowly position. What happens when family, friends, neighbors take advantage of you, right? That's the question here that Israel's having to deal with. What do we do? How do we respond? Laban is taking advantage of Jacob. It continues in verse 16. We have a couple new people show up, right? We have Leah and we have Rachel. And so Leah, there's always a word picture with names here. And so again, I'm going to go through some interesting commentary about this story. Leah means like gazelle. And if you've ever watched the Nature Channel, you'll see they just kind of frolic and they jump and they're so graceful. Leah was not ugly. That was never the connotation here. Leah was not ugly. In fact, more than likely, if we're going to try to take this more literally, Leah would have been maybe the more attractive in our culture today. The gazelle, the graceful, the beautiful. That's Leah. Rachel, the word Rachel here, it means ewe, not like ewe, but ewe like a female lamb that gives birth to lots of babies. So in their culture, you have to remember, a woman who is fertile that gives birth to lots of male babies is valued. The girl that is not giving birth to a lot, that is wanting to do her own thing, that is strong-willed, typically is not as valuable in their culture. So it's a very interesting shift in ours today, right? We would probably value the Leah over the Rachel in a lot of our culture today, depending on who you are, what you value, of course, how far down feminism road you've gone, all of that. It's just an interesting shift when you think about culturally. And so it goes on, and Jacob loved Rachel. He said, I will work for you 7 years. And again, these numbers are very important. 7 is basically, it's a time of once you get through it, it's fulfilled, it's big, right? You see it, whatever it is you're looking for comes to fruition. But 7 is typically associated with a time of difficulty. So Jacob, because he loves Rachel, is going to work for Rachel's hand in marriage. 7 years, of course it's going to be 7. And the story continues, verse 20. So Jacob worked for Rachel 7 years, but they appeared to him like a few days because of his love for her. I think this is beautiful. If you are Israel and you're reading this and you are seeing yourself in this story, maybe as the bride, right? Think about the depth here. We're in the middle of Babylonian captivity. We're dealing through so much hardship. And yet, even though it's painful, even though there's so much brokenness, it's going to seem like a blink of an eye if we hold on to that relationship, if that love is given time to have air, to grow, right? That's the idea between their God, right? It's going to be like a few days if love is the thing that sustains us. Really beautiful. Love for each other, love for our neighbor, love for even our enemy, love for our God. That will sustain us through the 7 years. Really rather beautiful. And so I like, again, this idea, working for the thing, not giving up. I like this quote here. When working for Rachel, Jacob assumes the role of Israel, struggling and toiling in Babylon. While the work is hard, The freedom that has been promised will be all the sweeter once it's given. For me, I hear real world application there. I know we try to look at the historical there, but think about like real world right now application. I think for a lot of us that sits well, doesn't it? That trends. It's beautiful. We understand this. Anyone work really hard for something and it pays off. I think of these kind of pictures here. All right, you've seen these Biggest Loser, whatever. Day one and then day 60, right? You see where they were and then where they end up because of their hard work. And it's really interesting to me. I think we're a bit of a divided culture on this one. I think perseverance, it brings results. But we often want to like jump to the end, don't we? We all love the end of the stories, but the like fight for it, the waking up at 4 a.m. morning workouts, the choosing not to eat certain foods while all of your family members are eating cookies and donuts and ice cream, right? You want to look like day 60, but getting to day 60 is going to take some time. It's going to take some commitment. It's going to take resilience. It's going to take self-will. And so the thing about this, the thing about day 1 to day 60 is if we wanted to just jump ahead, if we said, I just want the result, here's the thing, we would be robbed of that new character that was going to be formed, wouldn't we? If we just jumped to day 60, we would not be developing the habits that will actually sustain us from day 60 through the rest of our lives. The idea here is really pretty beautiful. It's a really ancient one, but a beautiful one. Perseverance, resilience, showing up in the mornings, right? It's going to build the character that's going to cause you to be the person you are forever, right? For the rest of your life. And so Israel right here, they are saying in the middle of Babylonian captivity, may we be the kind of people that work, that toil, that don't give up, knowing the end is going to be in sight at some point, but it's more about building the kingdom reality here so that when I leave, I bring it with me, right? The thing has been built here. Perseverance, resilience. I did the hard work, and I did it while I was in Babylonian captivity. That's really good. Yeah. Let me keep reading. So Jacob worked for Rachel 7 years. Came to pass, let's go to verse 21. It came to pass in the evening that Laban took his daughter Leah. So give me my wife, I did my thing, and then Laban does this. He deceives, right? He brings Leah instead. And so verse 25, it came to pass in the morning, behold, she was Leah. There she is, right? So he said to Laban, why is it that you have done this to me? Did I not work for you for Rachel? Why have you deceived me? Now, I get it. For many of us, when we read this story, if you take this literally, there's a lot of interesting questions. Is Jacob blind? Right? How would he have missed this? Right? In a wedding celebration with a Jewish community, you are celebrating all throughout the day with your significant other. And then you meet each other and you walk into the tent together, and that's where you would consummate the marriage. And then after that, you would leave and you'd go dancing somewhere. The idea that one could pull the wool over one's eye, this would have been almost comical for a Jewish audience. But here's the thing: there's a big but. There's a metaphor here. Right? For most Hebrew people, when they read this, they were not literalizing this. There was a deeper metaphor, a deeper message here. There was something bigger going on. And so Laban says this in verse 26. He says, it is not done so in our place to give the younger one before the firstborn. Complete the wedding week of this one. So again, in Jewish culture, you would continue the celebration for the week. Complete this with my daughter Leah. And I'll give you this one, Rachel, for the work that you will render for me another 7 years. So here's the thing. Again, in that culture, the eldest is often the one that like gained the blessing first. However, in this case, like by jumping to Rachel first, it would have lowered the value of Leah. And notice this, by jumping to Rachel first. By missing the difficult work first, you see how it's all coming together? Yeah. Jacob needs to stay longer, right? He has not developed the character, the person he's going to become. You're going to, Israel, have to be in Babylon a little bit longer. Moses, your people are going to be in Egypt a little bit longer. Your people are going to be in Rome a little bit longer. There is character to be developed in Rome. There's character to be developed in Babylon, right? And so we stay the course. We stay a little bit longer, right? And it's really interesting. The value of Leah, had he jumped to Rachel first, the value of Leah in her culture, she would have been worthless. They would have looked down on her because someone had skipped over her. And so the idea here, the really deep metaphor, is that no. Leah first, then Rachel, right? We work, we strive, we build resilience in Babylon. We don't give up, right? We continue on. We do the hard work. And I know this is cringy if you are obviously someone who doesn't buy into patriarchy anymore, man over the woman. But this was their culture at that time, right? And so we just have to remember where they're coming from. But the deeper metaphor is, Israel, you're going to be in Babylon a little bit longer. And maybe not that God is keeping you there longer, but that's just the reality of it. And maybe while you're there, build the character, build the kingdom here. That is the overarching idea again and again. I like this commentary of what they said of Leah here. This comes from Rashi again. Leah represents our broken, lesser neighbors who are often neglected when we Jews receive our blessings. We must remember to first look after the widow, the orphan, and the stranger within our gates before the wedding feast is truly celebrated. Leah is also a reminder, and I really like this one too. She's a reminder that everyone has a seat at the table. Right? When you look at the stories of Jesus, everyone has a place. You're a tax collector, you have a place at the table. You're a Gentile, you have a place at the table. You're a shepherd, you have a place at the table. You're a prostitute, there's a place for you, right? There should be a place for everyone at the table. And so Israel, when you become the new nation, when someday you step out of Babylonian captivity, will Israel be the kind of place that's going to leave captivity and bring others in? Keep the door open wide for everyone to come in. Will Israel be that kind of daughter, right? That kind of nation. Really pretty beautiful challenge. Let me keep moving. Verse 31, and the Lord saw that Leah was hated, so he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So notice this. Rachel's given after the wedding ceremony. She's given Bilhah first off. So she's given a maidservant. And the idea here is Rachel's going to conceive and Leah's going to conceive. However, Rachel does not conceive. But notice who Rachel's maidservant is. Bilhah. He gives his daughter the gift, Bilhah, which means simplicity. But a deeper understanding of the word means humility, right? Humility. It's interesting to think about the concept humility here. Rachel is given humility. She has to watch Leah give birth over and over and over again. It's frustrating. It's humiliating for her. Her value as a woman during that time era would have come from how many males she could conceive. She could put out into the world, right? And so Rachel, like Israel, is humble before the blessing is given. Yahweh holds this in order that we might understand and appreciate the gift granted in the latter years. I thought, what a great point, right? You cannot appreciate the blessing without the struggle. There is deep, deep blessing but oftentimes there is a struggle beforehand. Those six-pack abs that you want so badly, you will appreciate them all the more if you went through the struggle. Yeah, you will have so much appreciation for that A plus in chemistry if you struggled and worked hard for it, rather than just being given an A because you know so-and-so who knows so-and-so, right? You will appreciate the thing so much more. Verse 32, because the Lord has seen my affliction, for now my husband will love me. So the first one born to her is Reuben. And so Reuben, the word means announcement of life, right? Of course, for Leah, the firstborn is going to be, it's an announcement of life. Life is beginning, it's growing, even though this is new, even though the nation of Israel is still in the middle of captivity, there is new life ahead, right? Beautiful blessing. And then she conceives again, right? And again, literal or not, probably more metaphorical, because look at what the names mean. Simeon, right? Notice it's telling kind of the stories again of the nations of Israel, right? Simeon, God has heard, right? God has heard our call. God has heard our cry, and he's blessing us with children, blessing us with all of these tribes. Next one is Levi, brings us together, right? That's what the word means there. Judah, it means God is praised, right? For all the blessings. And so you have this concept of as we toil, as we move, as we do the difficult work, blessings multiply, and they multiply, and they multiply. And so Israel, like Leah, was once barren and without hope. We'll find new life when we wait on the Lord. Though we feel as unloved lovers at times, we are not a forgotten people. It's one of my favorite lines of commentary on this chapter. We are not a forgotten people. I love this. It made me think of this quote. When I think about working hard, not giving up, knowing we're not forgotten. Things work out best for those who make the best of how things work out. I think that quote is so fantastic. How do we make the best of where we are? Knowing if we're going to get the six-pack abs, we're going to have to work for it. If we want to have the healthy heart again, we're going to have to learn how to live a healthier diet, a healthier lifestyle. If we want the thing at the end, we're going to have to find ways to work out. And sometimes we're in the middle of pain, brokenness. And so the question is not, are things going to work out? The question is, how will you work with the things you have? In Israel, the question was, you have this life right here, right now, in the middle of Babylonian captivity. You're going to have to work through it. You're going to have to build resilience. You're going to have to do the hard work. The blessings will come. The blessings will come. But don't skip over Leah in order to get to Rachel. Yeah, so good. What an amazing lesson that often we miss there. Don't skip over Leah in order to get to Rachel. So good. So I started wondering, how do we take it home? For me, I started thinking, making the best of bad situations. I've seen great mentors in my life who have perfected this. And so I asked quite a few of them this week, making the best out of bad situations. What did you do? How did you navigate how to bring the best out of bad? And so here's some straight from them that I thought were really pretty interesting. One of them, put things into perspective. Consider the ways in which the situation is not as bad as it may seem. And more importantly, remind yourself that it's going to pass, right? You have gotten through things like this in the past before. Put it into perspective. Is this thing going to kill me? Well, more than likely not, right? Put it into perspective. That's what I love about nature. When you go into nature, you realize just how small you are. And once you get that into perspective, you realize how small your problems are. Right? Put things in perspective. Number 2, reflect on past crises. Try to remember a situation in your life where you thought, this is the end of the world, right? Try to put yourself in that place again. It could be a hard time we had to go through as a child or whatever, but people, probably many of us we experienced these end of the world moments, and just put yourself back there and remember it wasn't the end of the world, right? I did get through the thing. We made it. And if I made it back then, I can probably make it again now. Such good advice. Number 3, accept the situation. And man, this is difficult. We do not always like to accept when something happens, because I feel like maybe for some of us, that's a feeling that, well, I'm defeated. I'm becoming a defeatist. The reality is accepting that the situation happened. Only by accepting this can you let go of that negativity. You have to learn to accept it first. The negativity will pass once we accept it. So ask yourself whether there's anything that you can do right now to address the problem that you're worrying so much about, right? What can I do? How do I invest? Where do I invest my energy? All of those things. It only happens. I can only move forward if I understand this situation really is happening. The problem really is there, right? Accept that it's real. It's happening. Number 4, focus on what you have. If you start consciously focusing on the present, on the little things you can enjoy right now, there will be no space for negative thoughts. That was the idea. No matter how small the good moments are in difficult times, focus your attention on them. They will grow and will grow with you. That's the idea. And the last one, embrace change. Again, this is a constant theme, I feel like, in most of our take-at-homes. But by embracing change and making the best out of a bad situation, you're not only strengthening your resilience, you're also strengthening that ability to adapt. And I think for us, adaptation, learning to move with the punches, is so important to build resilience. So those were the 5 concepts I wanted to share with you today when we think about chapter 29 and what we can bring home with it today. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed this. As always, please consider going to ethos-church.org/donate. Become a partner with us and sharing these awesome messages about an incredible, incredible book, the Bible. And if you want to join us live, have great discussions with other people around the nation, consider going to Ethos Living Rooms. And as always, hit that subscribe button. Help us continue growing this channel. Take care, and we'll see you next week.